can we?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting procedure. If you want to watch it on YouTube, just look it up, and they have full videos about it. And it's not like delicate at all. They're like, it's like building something.
Did you watch the video before or after?
Before. Oh, I'm not scared of anything like that.
Okay. Good evening. Call the meeting to order for the City of Walker Planning Commission for November 16. First item on the agenda is a review of the minutes from November 2, 22. Any comments? Corrections? Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Tyler, supported by Scott, to approve the minutes as submitted from November 2. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. At this point, this is an opportunity for general public comment. We've got a couple of items on the agenda, but if you wanted to offer some comments about something not on the agenda this evening, this is an opportunity to do so. All right, seeing no takers, we'll move into the first item. This is a public hearing, case number 22-034, and I'll leave it to Community Development Director Frank Wash to introduce the project.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. This project is called Third Coast Motors, and they are asking for a special exception permit to run what our ordinance defines as an online auto auction operation. And that's a special use in our industrial districts. Relatively new use. We've added this to the zoning code over the past few years. And it's a use that I think from a staff standpoint, as you see in our staff report, the main concerns are just to make sure that the use fits the site. You know, this is can the use operate without, number one, impacting any public road right of way? Can they get in and out and load and unload? And Terry, I know that's something that you brought up. So I think that the applicant is here tonight to give a presentation to address that issue. My staff report goes into, here's what the special exception code in our ordinance says that the Planning Commission should consider when you're looking at a special land use. And it really does come down to, does the use fit the site, generally speaking? So the model motion we put together for you folks has the finding of, of findings of fact right out of the zoning ordinance. And that's up to the Planning Commission to make this discretionary decision of whether this use should be allowed really on this site. So I did raise some issues in my staff report that deal with the size of the property, the size of the lease space, what the applicant has proposed so far as far as the operation of the use, and I'll let them talk about that a little bit more. So I think this is really an opportunity for the Planning Commission and the applicants to talk through what their proposal is, and then you can go through your factual findings of does the use fit the site, and again, primarily will the site not, the main concern from staff is that these uses grow, so that if you start in 3,000 square feet or whatever, you know, where is the inventory going to go when business is good and then it grows? You know, is that going to fit on this site? Are there going to be excessive numbers of vehicles being stored outside? And then can they deliver without backing up on a 3-mile road? So I think if you zoom in on those two things, in my opinion, I think that's really the heart of the special exception decision on this one. And I'm going to get out of the way. You do have a model motion in your packet. I'm more than willing to go through my staff report line by line, but I thought that this would be more productive if we just engaged directly with the developer. And he does have a PowerPoint that I think he wants to flip through. It's just a few slides. You have the hard copies in front of you. So I will get out of the way and get his PowerPoint ready for display.
Good evening. Thanks for coming. Appreciate your consideration. I don't know how many of you read the staff report.
Want to click the button? There's a button on there to click so the microphone works.
There you go.
The one that says light that one up for Ed. Can you hear me better now? All right, I'm Steve Rothman. Thank you for having this meeting with me, and I appreciate the work that the planning commission did and the analysis they did. They were, by the way, very helpful. I would compliment them on being cordial and helpful and very professional in helping me at least get to this point. I think, Terry, you're the one that's familiar with GR Auto Gallery, so you're familiar with this kind of business. There are these kind of businesses opening all over the country, and you know there's a lot of discussions going on as what's the future of a normal retail car dealership, right? You've seen all this stuff. So this is a new opportunity. I've been in the consulting, by the way, I live in Grand Haven. I moved to Grand Haven in 2018, second marriage. My wife lived in Spring Lake and she didn't want to move to Atlanta, so here I am. But anyhow, I've bought and sold cars for years, restored cars. I love cars. I've spent most of my professional career in the consulting business. I was with big consulting companies, Anderson Consulting when they went out of business with my retirement and my capital. I was with Deloitte, and I mostly work with very large companies with large, complex business process and IT problems. And that's what I've done. Ford Motor Company was one of my bigger clients. But I've always loved cars and wanted to do something with cars, and I'm ready to wind down my consulting business. And I wanted to create I would call it a semi-retirement lifestyle small business where I could buy and sell cars, make a little money, get people really good, high-quality cars that they can afford, and, you know, just do that as sort of a lifestyle business. So I started doing this in June. I didn't realize all of the hard projects that I've done with 300 people working on them, this was harder than any of those projects. Dealing with, first of all, figuring out what the state of Michigan needs, then dealing with, you're the third municipality that I've talked to. I pursued Norton Shores. There was a building there. It was too expensive to rehab. Spring Lake Township didn't want to give me a exception for a building that was in the industrial space. So this is, you know, third time out. I like the people here I work with. The space is perfect. The landlord is very accommodating. It would be a very nice place for this project. And I'm in the process. I've got, of course, because of my background, I've got all the IT taken care of. I got a dealer management system. I got a website ready to go. I even have a few cars sitting in my garage. And what I need is a dealer's license. In order to get a dealer's license, you guys have to say it's okay to have a dealer at that location. So that's why we're here. Any questions on that? And by the way, my position in the marketplace is to only sell cars to people that I would want to personally own. Everything is going to be very high quality. And I'm going to focus on cars that people want so that I don't have to advertise. I'm never going to have an outside lot. One of the things I could never understand in my entire life is why anybody would have a $50,000 asset sitting out in Michigan in the wintertime. It just doesn't make any sense, right? And I have friends that consign cars and sell through consignment, and they make sure that those cars will be stored indoors. So all indoors, only indoors. The other thing is, I don't want this to be a huge business with a big staff and have to worry about employees. I'm thinking 10 cars a month, plus or minus. And really only focusing on niches where the cars sell themselves. A big focus of mine is going to be manual transmission cars, because you can't buy them anymore. And they actually sell themselves when you have them. And so sports cars, Jeeps, even trucks with manual transmissions, as well as what I call interesting, affordable classic cars. So you know classic cars could be insanely expensive, but there are a lot of classic cars there that are relatively affordable. And that if I can bring those in here, I can make those available to the customers. And then the final thing I'll tell you, part of my strategy is from living in the Midwest. I lived in Naperville for a really long time. You can buy really nice sports cars in the Midwest with very low mileage because people don't drive them in the winter. And so that's another part of so that's my strategy. Cars that people enjoy, cars that are high quality. The space is actually a little bit bigger than I need. I'm not planning on having more than 10 or so cars. I'll probably do some cars on consignment. I have to get a separate license for that. But with a broker's license, I can consign cars. And not more than 10 cars a month. So the space, I believe, is adequate. It's me and my partner. We may bring in a guy to do detailing. So we don't need a lot of parking. And so that's my plan. And I know the issue, Frank sent me the email Monday night, and I said, oh yeah, I gotta go deal with this now, because it is a real issue, and I understand it. I appreciate the position you guys are in. You can't have tractor trailers backing out onto 3 Mile Road. I get it, I understand that. So what I've been able to do yesterday, so yesterday was my project to figure out how to deal. So I started with a clean sheet of paper and said, okay, how do you deal with this issue? So what I did is, I have an electrical engineering background. I had a few civil engineering classes 100 years ago. But what I did is I said, all right, well, there's the site, that's the site, and we're talking about the top 25% of that building, so 3,000 square feet. And the other businesses are in there. The one on the end is a glass business, and they have people coming and going. The businesses in the middle don't seem to have a lot of activity anytime I've been out there. There's an insurance broker, small businesses. One of the other, I think, suites is for rent. So not a very busy place. So what I said is, all right, I've got all of that space. So what I did is I said, all right, well, how am I going to deal with this? Is that, which forwards it? Oh. One of the arrow buttons. Ah, no. I heard something.
Heard something.
Oh, there it is.
There we go.
All right, so first thing I did is I put my thoughts together on, okay, what am I gonna be doing here? Well, first of all, as I told you, GR Auto Gallery's got, I don't know, 400-ish cars, I think, in the location here. They're moving, 30, 40, 50 cars more, 100 cars a month. Very busy. Same thing with XYZ. And those, I think, are the two that you're familiar most with. XYZ is a really high volume, move the cars kind of business. I'm planning only on 10 a month. When I ship cars out, because that's the other part of this business, a lot of the customers will never come here. I will have videos and pictures on the internet. If they want, they can have the car inspected, have it sent to a repair shop to be inspected, come and inspect it. But basically, I'm only going to ship one car at a time. So shipping, I don't think, is a big issue, because I can arrange for flatbeds, tow trucks to take those cars. I don't think that's a big issue. We're not going to have a lot of deliveries either. 10 cars a month means, unless you let them grow, it's, a couple of cars a week. I'm going to be buying cars at auction very selectively, and I'm really targeting sourcing in the Midwest. I can actually drive the cars back from Detroit or Chicago. So that's one way I'm going to get the cars back. I recognize that I will have to deal with tractor trailers, right? That I'm going to get some cars from an auction, and they're going to put them on a tractor trailer, and mine's going to be in the one in the front. So when the tractor trailer pulls up, they got to take all the other cars off to get to mine. I understand I have to deal with it. I think that's what your concern is. So what I did, the best I could do yesterday, is I said, well, how much room does a tractor trailer need to turn around? So I found this website. You can find anything on Google. I found this website that actually lays out that you need about a 40-foot radius to turn around, 180 degrees to turn around a 40-foot trailer. And the reason why it's less than the length of the trailer, obviously, because the cab turns, right? So think 40 feet to turn a 40-foot trailer. Okay, I said, all right, well, that makes sense. Seems to make sense. I even put the reference on there. So there's the space I have to turn around a trailer. That picture is, I think, the space. And what you'll see, it goes from the sidewalk to the edge of the pavement, sort of in the top right-hand corner. That's the paved area. And I drew a red box because that includes the 5 parking spaces that I get allocated to my space. So that's the space I'm going to need to turn around a trailer at the end of the property. And then I went on to the Kent County GIS parcel mapper and figured out, okay, well, how big is that? Well, according to the dimension, that you can see it right here, the little guy. I asked the GIS mapper to map from this point to that point. I came up with 54 feet. So according to that, and again, it's not an expert-based engineering study, it's sort of the best I could do yesterday. There's 54 feet and about 75 feet long to turn around a trailer. I think that'll work. So that's kind of where I am now. Thoughts, questions? Does this make sense? Is it in the ballpark?
I have a question. Is there going to be regular business hours, or is this by appointment? What kind of hours?
It's going to be by appointment. I'm going to be there because the state of Michigan requires you to post regular business hours as a dealership. So I will post regular, but it's going to be 100% by appointment. There's not going to be cars sitting out at a lot. I have to have a sign that says the name of the company, but I don't want people to just come wandering in. So it'll be by appointment, absolutely. And that's how most of these businesses work.
You said a lot of these are used cars,
All used cars.
and people don't come and check them, they just take your word for it?
It's an interesting change, Joe, in the industry right now. So you know what did that? It was the pandemic and Carvana. And Carvana, I hope none of you have any money invested in Carvana. That was the stupidest idea I ever saw, to put all that capital into a low-margin business and build car vending machines. I mean, it makes no sense. But they legitimized the idea because people couldn't go to dealerships. So there are people, I've bought a handful of cars sight unseen. What I do, they put all kinds of pictures, and I specifically ask for detailed pictures of the underside of the car, because what don't you want? You don't want rust, especially here, you want rust. So you have detailed pictures, you put videos on the site with starting up from cold start, what's coming out of the tailpipe. So basically, they can actually do it. There are other people, and I would do this if people request. I would do a FaceTime call with them and walk around the car with them, so they're almost there. That's one thing to do. The other thing is to have a reputation as somebody that only sells quality cars, and that's my goal. I want every single customer that I ever deal with to be a repeat customer and to refer cars. And then the other last thing is you have to have a presence on the web that legitimizes you. That says, yep, this is a real company. So yes, people buy. I'm expecting more than half of the cars that I sell will be sight unseen. And yes, they do that. Good question.
In terms of, I'm familiar with the GR Auto Gallery next Wednesday, and more so GR Auto Gallery.
They're nice people over there.
And they deal, sounds like, in the same niche that you're describing.
A little different. A little different. They're more higher end collector cars. You know, the $150,000 collector cars. They have some ordinary cars, but I want to provide people with everyday sports cars with manual transmissions that they can buy and afford. And also, I have a Jeep Wrangler. I love my Jeep Wrangler. I call it the ultimate sports car. And that's a niche. That's a market for people with manual transmissions. So my niche is a little different than there. It's definitely overlap. We would sell some of the same cars, absolutely.
In terms of, in this case, having the ability on this particular site to maneuver the vehicle, you provided some information here as far as a turning template that suggests you could make that turn in a 40-foot area. What I've seen at these other locations is that the carriers that actually transport the cars may have the ability to just put it on one vehicle, bring it on in, or there may be a type of vehicle that accommodates several on there. And the space that they have there at those other locations appears to be a little bit more ample than it is right here. And the concern is that it got to the point where for a period of time, they were unloading the cars out on the public street. And which caused a disruption for the street itself. And as it turns out. In this case, thank you. this case, you've got, this is on a more of an arterial street. These locations are located more on a local street within an industrial park. And so there's some disruption there. And when we've talked to them about having that done on the private property, one of the responses, well, the response we got several occasions is that, well, these are the carriers, they handle the bringing it in. We have no control over when they make the deliveries
That's true.
and, or what type of vehicle.
That's also true. You can request, but you're right.
And so timing-wise and space-wise, to be able to accommodate that, I have some concerns on whether or not this particular location will be able to handle that. As I drove out to the site, what made it would appear to be a possibility of accommodating it is if something was worked out with the property immediately to the east, to be able to come around the back of their building. There is a grade there, grade differential that would have to be addressed. Be able to come down and maneuver within the site so that you aren't backing up, you're coming in straight in, you make the delivery, and then you're pulled straight out back onto the street. But that's why I asked that Frank communicate this to you ahead of time, just so you could have to think that through, because that's a concern I have. Now, others may have a little better idea on the turning radius needed to drive these kind of vehicles. I don't have that knowledge.
I didn't until I found that, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not something I can tell you a lot about a lot of stuff, but I can't tell you much about that. It seemed reasonable though, from a number standpoint.
And if there's no control over the time at which they would make that delivery, where's the vehicle gonna be? Is it gonna be offloaded there, or are they gonna wait there until you come or your partner comes?
I'll
to
be
able to
there
get it?
when they're during business hours. We're just doing the, back to Scott's point, it's gonna be appointment for, customers to look at
Appointment for
vehicles.
customers, but not necessarily an appointment for the timing of the delivery of the vehicle.
Well, you can't control that. I mean, I can request, I can give them boundaries, but you're right, they're gonna show up when they're gonna show up.
So that's where the question I have is whether or not they've got room enough to maneuver it within their site. If they have the ability to work with the adjacent property owner, I think that might be more workable from my standpoint. And the timing of those deliveries, and if you order a couple of cars, will you have a couple of them on the property at
I would
any
never
time during
do,
the day?
no, I would only order one delivery at a time. I really am doing this with just my partner. If we had cars coming, we wouldn't have three, so it'd be one at a time. They should be able to pull up at the back by our property and be out of the way. So they will be out of the way until they get offloaded.
And then
They won't be on the street, they'll be in front of the.
But as they leave the site, will they have to back all the way out?
No,
Or will they be able to maneuver with
I
it?
looked at that, and it would be illogical and actually inappropriate for me to ask you to allow me to have tractor trailers backing out on 3 Mile Road. I wouldn't, that's not feasible. So that's why I figured out what they needed to turn around, and it looks like they could turn around in the space in front of my property.
Okay.
So that's what, now, by the way, Terry, your point about the business to the east, what is it? Frederick Supply, this is my realtor lane. We already asked them. Thank you for the suggestion. They said no. They said, you know what? Even the top corner right here, you see this triangle right here? That would even be helpful, but he said, no, we have to sometimes park there. So, it would be a favor to ask him, he's very gracious, he says, I really can't do it. However, the building to the west, which is the Great Lakes coach business, I didn't get to talk to the owner yet because he wasn't there. His house got destroyed in the hurricane down in Florida, but I talked to somebody that worked for him, and he might be willing, and he's got a curved driveway in front of his business, so it'd be really simple. So, I've asked, I haven't talked to the owner yet. So yeah, that was an option, but I really think this showed me it's feasible to turn around. So I think, because this is all of our space right here, it's 25% of the building, so a trailer could just pull in here and not be in anybody's way. And then offload and turn around. So they wouldn't be on the street, they're not gonna offload on the street. I can't control the timing, you're correct. You can limit them to normal business hours, right? So if they show up at 8 o'clock at night, they gotta go find some place to park their truck. So within normal business hours, we'll generally be there and we'll be able to get them offloaded.
Is the trailer able to back into the, like, door H? Or is that door too small for?
No, a tractor trailer could actually back into
So they
that.
could pull in, back into that trailer door, drop off cars, pull straight out, and then take the turn and go back out on the 3 mile. So they could do that, potentially. It's
Yeah,
tight.
that's true, because door, I don't have the front here, thank you. That H door is right here, so he could pull up like this and back into H and offload.
As long as you don't go in the neighbor's property, which you just said he doesn't like. So, yeah.
A little bit,
You
not
may have,
on-
and you have your 5 parking spots, you'd have to make sure there's no cars on the end, which if it's just you there, then you pull on the one closest to 3 miles, so.
Right, and the other, just so you know, these other businesses down here, there's almost never anybody. So parking a car down there.
Well, never say never, because then it'll happen, you know.
Of course not, of course you can't, but you could say sort of, you know, what, conceptually. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, that was my concern about the timing of the deliveries, and having enough space there to make that maneuver. And that's with a 40-foot, but if you have one that's longer, that they're carrying other cars with them, then what do you do in that circumstance? So that, again, I don't have enough knowledge to be able to say they can't make that maneuver, but it just appears tight to me.
This turning template is a 40-foot wheelbase to wheelbase. This is not a semi that we're looking at here, just so we're clear. This is a truck with a trailer, and a lot of the times these cars are brought on a transport truck. That's a significant difference in terms of being able to turn around. So this is a little tricky.
It is, it's still a tractor with a swivel and then a trailer on the back with the vehicles on it. And if they're really big, and I don't know that if I would have to deal with those, but if they're really big, there's actually a car on the top over the swivel, right? You guys have seen those, that's how the.
Yeah,
new
a traditional
cars
trailer that's a transport would be 45 feet long in the trailer alone. And then you have another 20 for the tractor. This would be good to have Tom telling us this.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I was just looking up the standard length of a 6-car hauler trailer double deck. It's 53 feet, the standard length of the trailer. Then you add the tractor in there, so you're up to 70 feet. Correct. Which would be a miracle turning around in there. I'm just playing Tom Bile right now because he always has trouble with turning templates.
Tom knows
So
all that stuff, doesn't
I'm
he?
taking his place. So I don't buy the turning template. If there's gonna be semis in there, it doesn't work. That's my opinion.
Maybe do the public hearing, take a break, think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, okay, very good point.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Tyler, supported by Scott to open the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Anybody else have any comments that you'd want to offer on this?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Tyler, supported by Scott to close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passed. I'm not against the business model, because I think it's one that can work. My main concern is as it relates to this particular property and the ability to safely get the transport vehicle off the roadway so that they can unload it and then safely get it back on the roadway. And yeah, that's, as it relates to this particular site, that's my concern.
I would agree with you on that comment. I think the business is fine here. I like it. I think it's great business. I don't have any issue there. I just don't see how, if it were a regular truck and trailer, I can see that working. Even the aerial picture that's on the GIS shows a truck and trailer on it. You can see, now granted the trailer will be slightly longer than that one, but this turning template might work, but a larger size, it would be very difficult to make this work. And unless there's a way to come up with a better truck trailer unload spot, this is tricky. I just don't see it.
I agree with you.
I also wasn't, Tom, I'm playing Tom again, he would bring up that your turning template would turn into parking spaces also. And he says you can't, would say that. My opinion is, I'm with Terry on it, I have no problem with the idea. But when I go through the findings of fact for special exception, the first one is to establish maintenance, location, or operation of the use will not be detrimental or endanger the public. Well, we don't know that with the tractor trailers having to unload out in the street, back out into the street, I can't say that confidently. So we have to meet these. I can't do that.
Now, part of our conversation, and he's already, the applicant's already approached the property owner to the east, and to see whether they could work something out there to maneuver through. Hadn't been able to make contact with the one to the west. One possibility here is to consider table action, give him an opportunity to see whether or not he could work something out with the neighbor to the east, or excuse me, to the west, to be able to more confidently say that the turning efforts will take place off the public right of way, and they'll be able to go into the site on front way in and leave the site in the same fashion. Maybe that would be an opportunity to just give him that opportunity without saying no at this point, but give him an opportunity to take a look at that option, and if he can come up with something, be able to come back and appear before this board.
Another option, I don't know, I'm throwing this out, I'm certainly not a civil engineer. Would it be worthwhile to have a civil engineer that works with logistics companies to look at this problem and say, here is a feasible solution? So the idea of using the door H, maybe there is a little bit of room I could negotiate with the property on the, is that worth doing? Would you guys be open to that?
I would not be open to that because you can't guarantee it.
Well, of course not.
And looking to the property to the west, there's no access, cross-access easement, there's no cross-access on that. That would mean they'd be unloading on the property to the west.
Correct.
And then driving the car in, out
Correct.
onto 3 Mile and back into
That's
that
correct.
property.
That's absolutely
I
correct.
could live with that. But I want to be guaranteed there's not going to be a semi-trailer backing out on the 3 Mile. We already see problems like that now and then, so.
Well, we should put it back on the applicant to come up with a plan as to how they would do it. I'm in agreement with you on that, Terry. Where tabling would be fine with me.
If you're okay with tabling that, again,
Well,
that would give
tabling's
you an
better than
opportunity.
no.
Pardon?
Tabling's better than no.
Yeah.
At least is a possibility. So
And
what you're
just-
saying is I need to come up with an alternative for offloading tractor trailers that will not impact 3 Mile Road.
Correct.
It may be somewhere else. I might be able to find somebody else that lets me offload cars at their location. That would be suitable as well.
Then I'll make a motion. Case number 22-034, Third Coast Motor Special Exception Use Permit. Based on the application material provided, I make a motion to table the special exception use permit for Third Coast Motors at 3921 3 Mile Road to allow the applicant to explore unloading and loading of semi-trailers that is acceptable to the planning commission.
Okay, motion by Tyler, supported by Jason to table the request to allow the applicant to look at other options in order to accommodate those turning movements. So, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate your
All right, the next item on the agenda is case number 22-035. It's a site plan review, and Frank, again, if you could introduce it for us.
Okay, give me 1 second to switch files here. I see the applicants are here, so we have people that we can talk to when you get into the specifics that are noted in the staff reports. Mr. Connors has provided you with a staff report, but Rachel Nagorson from his office is here to answer questions you have related to his staff report and the stormwater permitting process. So we provided you folks with a staff report that is dated November 8th, 2022 for this project, which is identified by its address, one of the addresses, 3101 Fruitridge Northwest. This is site plan review, so we don't have a public hearing. So no public notification was put out other than the 300-foot courtesy cards that we send out. And the reason that there's no public hearing involved here is because the site's appropriately zoned industrial, and the proposed use is an industrial building with uses that are permitted by right within the district. So you're just doing site plan review tonight, and I'll let the applicants talk about the uses inside of the building and explain a little bit about their proposal in more detail. But what I would like to do is just go through a couple of comments for you folks. I don't think they're anything major, but this is a site that is, I've been here since 2004, and I haven't seen any real activity on this site. So prior to me getting here, that's why I call this a semi-improved site. There was some activity, and you see in the file notes that go back to the late 90s and early 2000s about utilities being run into this site, a driveway being put in, conservation easements being put over wetland areas, but then it kind of stalled out. So now you have a formal proposal to put about a 200,000 square foot industrial building on this site. They do have access to Fruitridge via easement across property that's owned by consumers. And then the site itself, we'll get into in a little bit here. There are some constraints on the site. There's localized floodplain and a creek channel that goes through there. There's a couple of wetland areas. So I'm sure that'll get into more of the stormwater issues and potential permit requirements from Eagle. And Rachel can help you out with that. But in my staff report, I call out a couple of things other than what we had just discussed. There are 2 existing lots of record here. They should be combined into one. And I don't think the applicant's going to have a problem with that, but I have that down as a condition of site plan approval. And then on sheet A201, the exterior wall materials should be labeled. Are they going to be metal, insulated panel, tilt-up concrete? That's something that I think the applicant talk about tonight and then get on that plan. And then regarding signage, I think they would like to talk about some updated location of signage. But because this is a non-PUD site, the signage will be as allowed by the zoning code, standard ground sign and wall sign. What I did put on your model motion was if you're interested, or if they're interested in getting wall signage that faces I-96, then the planning commission can allow that tonight. It's just that the total square footage for wall signage can't be more than what's allowed under the non-PUD code. And what we're seeing with most of these big buildings that face I-96 is they want some kind of identification on the wall. The speed rack is right down the street. You see they put up quite a bit of signage. And then Flexco and everybody who's facing 96 seems to be wanting some kind of signage. So if they want to get into that, then feel free to make that allowance here tonight. That way we can get all of it done in one night. They won't need to come back for any review for signage. Other than that, that's pretty much all I have from my standpoint. And we did give you a model motion, and Moore and Brugink gave you a multi-page response to all of the red line comments that came out of Site Plan Review Committee. I think they went through them bullet point by bullet point, which was very helpful. We appreciate that. Most of those are engineering related, and there's a couple of fire department issues, but they relate pretty much back to water service. And they took care of all of the CDD comments, so we appreciate that as well. So that's in a nutshell how we've gotten to this point, and I'm going to get out of the way and have Rachel maybe at least introduce Scott's comments, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so this is my first planning commission. I will try to not get in too much of the fine details with stormwater. It's kind of hard for me to not do that because my job is to look at the finer details when these projects come for stormwater permitting. But so just going to run through the comments real quick. The first comment just regards one of the drainage structures. It just doesn't look like it's going to be capturing some of the water. Below the 722 contour, there's images in the report that just highlight this area, so that'll probably have to be adjusted. Referring back to the designer's narrative that Frank referred to, they noted that the detention, they could meet the stormwater detention requirements for the site by putting water in both the wetland to the north and the existing detention basin that is to the southeast. Eagle doesn't really like to allow those uses, so they would have to get approval for that to show that Eagle would allow detention in there. Otherwise, they could potentially expand that existing detention pond to take care of that volume. I don't think that would be too bad. And then the detention pond that is there does not have an outlet control structure. So this is kind of one of those older improvements on this site. It wasn't really... The detention pond was just kind of roughed in, so that'll have to have an outlet control structure to control the volume leaving the site. Back on the wetland note, the southern tip of this site suggests that there'll be a small amount of wetland fill down there as well. So that would also need Eagle permitting. There are some options with the wetland areas, like I said, dealing with the detention and that existing basin, seeing if they can do all that, maybe backing off that corner a little bit. So I don't think it'll be a really big issue though. But yeah, with those wetland permits, it's just been taking a very long time for projects to get those approved. Some projects it's been taking about 9 months before Eagle's issuing those permits. So I would recommend, if they really want to get building this soon, maybe making some adjustments so there's no wetland impacts. And then the last comment is just, I didn't really see any stormwater quality on this design, but we can work through that in the stormwater permitting process. So getting that channel protection and pollution removal. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Any questions for either Rachel or Frank? So it looks like they've got the capacity within their site to perhaps provide the required detention without necessarily requiring a wetland permit.
Right. Like I said, potentially expanding that other pond would work. But yeah, that is also right along the wetland, so they just have to kind of get into those design details.
I thought the same thing, and I talked to Scott, I think it was late last week, I don't remember. You've been here a long time, I can't remember us seeing Eagle grant anything into a wetlands as storage, I just can't remember that, so I imagine they would have to expand that basin that's out there that's overgrown right now, so that's my opinion.
Well, let's give an opportunity for the applicant to come. If they want to move on it, have them make the presentation and see how they would address these issues.
Thanks. Good evening, Justin Longstreth with Moore and Brugink Engineers representing the applicant. Ben Seatsma is here from Honeycrisp if there's any questions specific to him, but I think I can try and answer most of everything. I don't know how much you want me to get into the details of responding to engineering comments. I think in general, the stormwater comments we can resolve. As part of our plan, we are even just raising the elevation of the berm around the existing basin to provide capacity, so that there are things that we can and are doing to increase that capacity. And it's very similar to what we did for transport properties, where there was an existing stormwater basin in place, and we just modified it with some of the new criteria for the city stormwater to just supplement what's already in there. That's what we're planning to do here as well. So stormwater, not a problem. The wetland in the corner, down in this corner, southeast corner, we can revise the configuration of that driveway around that corner to stay out of, and we'll certainly do that. That was an oversight on my part. So absolutely, we do not want eagle permitting to go through that process, so we'll pull that a little closer to the building and avoid that. As far as building materials, this is a very similar building to what was just constructed on 4 Mile and Fruitridge right down the road. Same developer, same building, same uses, same materials. It's a sister project essentially.
Is signage proposed on the 96 side, or?
So we're proposing a monument sign out on Fruitridge. And then we have a wayfinding sign in that landscape island that as you come in, just to direct trucks one way, cars the other. And then there will absolutely, we'll want wall signage on the 96 side on the building.
And Frank, you said that's determined by the code then? The amount of wall signage, we don't have the opportunity to expand that, or?
No, in this case, what you can say is that they're allowed wall signage per the standard sign code, the non-PUD sign code, but you're allowing them to put signage on the wall that faces 96.
Okay.
We wrote that into the code years ago just to make sure that Planning Commission would review, I forgot all the specifics behind that. It's been too long now, but the Planning Commission wanted the ability to say, yeah, you can put signs there, but we just want to be able to say yes or no to it. But the square footage will be determined by the size of the building, the lineal feet of the wall. And if they want to put it all facing 96, I think what we put in the model motion was the wall signage facing I-96 determination. If the Planning Commission is willing to say something like, yes, it's allowed, but it cannot exceed what's allowed in the non-PUD sign code, that'll give them maximum flexibility and it'll help us out from a permitting standpoint.
Thanks, Frank.
Any other comments, questions?
I guess I saw there's not water to the site yet. It's stubbed at Fruitridge still?
There's actually 2 water lines that come into the site, one for domestic water and one for fire protection. They actually run almost to the interstate right of way. They run down the drive and then into the site a fair bit. We're actually cutting and capping those back quite a ways and then running them into the building on the north side of the building. So we are using what's there.
You know that driveway is 418 yards long.
Correct. It's a long drive, yes.
That's a long driveway.
Yep. But yeah, all of the water is in, and then the sanitary sewer, there's a public sanitary that runs along the east property line that we'll tie into with our service there.
So as you've laid us out, describing your approach to the stormwater, you feel that you're going to be able to come up with a design that will not require an eagle permit?
Yes.
Okay. Will this all be developed in one project, or will that be phased?
It'll all be developed in one project. So the only exception may be the trailer storage on the north side. That may be down the road, but as far as the building is concerned, it'll all be constructed at one time.
Okay. And it's intended to be two-way traffic along all sides of the
Not all sides. So on the west side, we have a 20-foot drive lane on that side that's going to be reserved for emergency vehicles only and signed that way. So if I'm an employee or a customer coming to the site, I would enter and then travel down the drive aisle on the east side, park, and then exit the same way. And then the west side would only be reserved for secondary access for emergency vehicles. All the truck traffic would stay on the north side of the building and, again, not travel down that other drive.
So you're really consciously separating that passenger vehicle and the truck traffic
Very much
within
so.
the site.
Yep.
What are the businesses that are going in here?
So, to be determined. I think that they would say that they have maybe half of the building reserved, but not signed up for yet, kind of contingent on the decision tonight by the planning commission, but very similar to what we had up on 4 Mile and Fruitridge, where it's gonna be a mix of logistics and maybe light assembly, those types of uses.
Is this 32 acres? Did I read that right?
It is, a large portion of it is wetlands. So maybe the western 2/3 of it is all wetlands.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking. The building isn't that big for 32 acres.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was reference made to the consumer's energy easement that required. So I kept on looking for it to be east-west, but it's actually north-south along the
Along
street.
Fruitridge, yeah. They own, I don't know, maybe a 60 or 70-foot strip on the west side of Fruitridge. And there's an easement that we have from consumers that allows us to cross.
Okay. No, it surprised me that this hasn't developed beforehand. And it looks like they went quite far in readying this site for development quite a few years ago now. And what a
It's a relatively flat site, pad ready, and
Yeah, I was
kind
out
of
there tonight and it's.
ready to rock and roll, yeah.
I was
Yeah.
really surprised that there's an old semi-trailer on it. I don't know what that's from, but I was really surprised on, it's flat and I know there's a big piece of property with a lot of wetlands, so you're not getting the acres for your money, but
about a 200,000 square foot building on
yeah,
this
I know,
property.
that's impressive.
And right next to the expressway. Boy, it just,
Easy on, easy off, all of it.
yeah.
Question, there's a lot of parking on the south side. And you said that on both east and west, it's just gonna be one-way traffic?
Just on the west side,
And the west side, that's just for emergency vehicles only?
and then on the east side will be two-way traffic.
Because it looks like the same,
They're close. One's 24, one's 20 feet wide and 24 feet wide.
isn't
So they're-
Scott Lake wider for two-way traffic? I'm surprised, because Scott's not here, but doesn't he like wider, like 30 foot?
Well, that's
For
actually
two-way?
the width of a street. 24 is usually what we'll go for,
Okay.
for
All right, I'm just asking.
two-way traffic, non-semi.
Okay.
You know, in this case, I think they're proposing just to be non-semi traffic and their semis would be separated out.
You can make that curve tighter, the one that's got the wetlands on the, okay. Yeah, I'm just kind of worried that somebody's gonna go up to the west and try to go out that way. And somebody's gonna come in from the other way and then they're gonna be stuck.
So I can't tell you that that won't
I
happen,
know,
but we
that's
are
what-
putting signage on both sides. Do
Yeah,
not
well, I'll
enter on
read
one
signs, but I'll
side,
say do not
emergency
take a
vehicles
left-hand
only
turn
on the
here, and
other.
they all take left-hand turns here. I know. Yep, okay. And there's no way to make it any wider because of the wetlands?
So we have wetlands on the west
Yeah,
side and an
okay.
existing stormwater pond. We're pushing the limits of it.
190,000
so.
square foot, take 8,000 square foot off and then bring it, okay.
Now, is there a sidewalk right tight against the building, or is that just a landscape strip?
It is a proposed sidewalk. I think we're talking about taking that out and putting a landscape strip on that side, but as shown, it is a sidewalk, correct?
Now, I guess employees, if they're gonna be walking on their lunch hour, might use that.
I have a 400-yard driveway to walk.
All right. Well, have we addressed, I believe, the items that were brought up both by the planning staff and the engineering office. Sounds like they're in agreement that they're taking an approach not need a Eagle permit.
Do you want a comment from the audience at all? Or I don't know that.
Yeah, if there's someone here in the audience that wanted to speak on this, it's not a public hearing, but if you've got a question.
I guess I'd like to. It's okay from here.
If you wouldn't mind.
It's being recorded, so.
All right.
Thanks, that's good.
My name's Joe Mikey. I'm with Denon Steel. I'm a neighbor of the proposed site. I'm all in favor of the building, don't get me wrong. The only concern I have is the traffic out front. It's getting even more and more congested to get out onto Fruitridge today. And I was curious if there's going to be any plans to change the infrastructure on the road to make it safe for not only our associates to get out, but this new building and all the associates associated with that.
Is that bridge scheduled?
I can say that the mayor and our state representatives and state senator are working very hard to get that bridge on MDOT's list for reconstruction. When is it going to happen? We don't really know. But when it is approved, finally, it would be reconstruction of the bridge to match what you see at Walker Avenue, and then also relocation of the ramps, because the configuration out there now for some of the ramps is far from ideal. And then that would also include improvements on Fruitridge.
I'm not a civil engineer. I don't know if a different light or something to help with the traffic. Every year we've had a serious accident with our folks leaving the facility already.
Yeah.
And, I'm responsible to make sure they go home the same shape they came in, right? So just knowing that the additional traffic from there's a lot more traffic from Amazon.
Yeah.
Just asking for help.
Yep.
That's all I have.
Now, along there's the lane along the curb line is right turn only across your
Right.
frontage, correct? How far does that extend? Does that extend as far north as this drive right here?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so, no. I think it cuts in just at our property.
Yeah.
So, because the centermost lane, there's just one through lane across your frontage right now. So when these improvements take place, you'll probably have two through lanes. So you might actually be in a little better position right now because you have that set aside for you. But if you've had accidents, the accidents have happened, so that's a concern to have.
Yeah.
I just encourage you to keep in touch with staff as things might develop in terms of reconstructing that Fruitridge Bridge. Then you'd have a good opportunity to provide some input into that.
Yeah, we'd be more than willing to support whatever we can do.
Appreciate that.
All right. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Well, are we ready to take action on this?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. Case number 22-035, 3101 Fruitridge Northwest Site Plan Review. Based on the application material provided, I make a motion to approve the site plan for 3101 Fruitridge Avenue Northwest Industrial Project subject to the following conditions and based on the findings of fact noted below. Conditions of site plan approval. Number one, applicant agrees to all conditions and approval as noted in the Community Development Director's report dated 11/8/22, noting that signage is allowed on the I-96 side of the building, but must meet code. Number two, applicant agrees to all conditions of approval and noted in the city engineers dated 11/8/22. Oops, I guess I already said that. Wall signage. Findings of fact per section 94-283. Dimensional requirements. The dimensional arrangements of buildings and structure conforms to the required yards, setback height, and other applicable bulk and placement regulations of the ML zoning district. Building arrangement, the proposed building and structures have a compatible relationship to the site terrain, landscaping, open space, and other buildings and structures existing and proposed. The bulk location and height of proposed buildings and structures, as well as the general character of the development, will minimize any adverse effect to other development in the surrounding area, and will not place demands on public services or facilities in excessive capacity. Next, drainage and surface water. Proper site drainage will be provided so that removal of surface waters will not adversely affect regulated natural areas, neighboring properties, or the public storm drainage system. Vehicular access and parking. The provisions for vehicular loading and unloading and parking, and for vehicular and pedestrian circulation on the site and onto adjacent public streets and ways will not create hazards to safety and will not place demands on public services or facilities more than capacity. Drives and streets and other elements have been designed to promote safe and efficient traffic operations within the site, and shall provide safe and efficient vehicular access to and from the site, considering adjacent streets and curb cuts. Off-street parking and loading areas have been provided as required by the chapter in a manner that will minimize noise, glare, odor, and other effects on uses on the site or on adjacent properties. Exterior lighting will not create undue hazards to motorists traveling on adjacent public streets, nor damage the value or diminish the usability of adjacent properties. Lighting will be adequate for the safety of the occupants or users of the site. Signs. The size and location of signs will be designed in relation to signs on adjacent sites and will be located to avoid impairment of traffic safety and visibility of motorists. Every sign will be proportionate in its design and its visual relationship to the buildings and surroundings as an accessory use to on-site structures. Every sign will be designed as an integral architectural element of the buildings and sites to which it is principally relates. Emergency access. All buildings and structures will be arranged to permit sufficient access to emergency vehicles.
Okay, we got a motion by Tyler,
Support.
support by Scott. Any questions? Call the question. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
You're gonna build a pad to unload cars on one end of it? Oh, sorry. It's for the down the street.
Oh, jeez. Go around the corner.
Just around the corner.
Just around the corner.
You guys are well prepared. It was a good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of water stuff on this one. It depends on what they have to do it one way or the other.
I don't think it'll be too bad. They can just make some slight.
No, and, we talk a lot about it, but they have to meet the regulations. They just have to do it. So it's like, you gotta do something.
Well, and there's a lot of just, even if he doesn't do that sidewalk, there's some landscape that's there that reduces a lot of that water quality requirements. And I even looked at that area where they park the semi-trailers, that pavement that goes right up to the wetland, if they just back that off just a little bit and put in some water treatment there, like a meadow swale,
Yeah.
they'll be able to get it.
Yeah, there's some simple things we can do.
Yeah.
You do have the details right there.
It's what she does.
I'm impressed.
You see Gracewell's going away? The golf course, they just, they're developing their 600 homes, condos and homes at Gracewell.
Oh, really?
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, it starts next year. Goes until 2040, they said. They're gonna keep parts of the golf course as they build houses around it, and then golf course done by 2040.
Sounds like a meeting site.
What?
Sounds like
Fire
a
out.
meeting site.
Yeah.
Alpine's next.
Yeah.
Alpine Golf Club's been up for sale for 10 plus years.
This piece of property was owned by a particular person that didn't want to sell it for a while. And, this one was tricky to develop. I've looked at this one for a few different things.
Oh, really? Interesting.
It has a lot of wetland.
There's a lot of
It says that there's a lot, on the old plans, it says there's a lot of conservation conservation easements, but the only true conservation easement is along that driveway. So that was just kind of shown incorrectly for years, cause I checked Eagle's, conservation, cause when it's a formal conservation easement, you cannot touch the wetland again. But the only one that's like that is along the driveway, the other ones are just shown wrong on the old plans when they first improved it, so.
Most of the guys that were looking at this wanted 300 plus thousand square feet. And this site won't support that.
Yeah.
But at 200 would, but you wouldn't traditionally look for a 200,000 square foot building on a 30-acre site. So it was too much site for that, and these guys, they figured out kind of their sweet spot for it. So I'm glad something went in there.
Yeah. What's
Any-
next, Frank?
Couple of quick updates for you. We will have a meeting on December 7th, and the only item on the agenda will be Vista 45.
Oh, boy.
They've been tuning that plan up, and staff has been working to refine some of the road right-of-way and road width, road design. I think we've made some progress on that. And we have asked them to put together a SketchUp model that shows the M45 frontage. And so they will come in with that, and then I think the mayor is gonna try and work with Meyer and see where we can get with Ferndale right away south of M45, because that's an essential part here, and really it does need to be public street. You know, these.
It's not wide enough right now, is it?
Well, there would be improvements that would be
Yeah.
made. Yeah, right now, you know, I always like traffic studies, and Scott and I go back and forth on those, but I like to see what they say, you know, because really, the reason I put all those findings of fact in there, even for a site plan, is to trigger some examination of the details of the plans, right? So at least you're mentally checking off, okay, all these things are on the plan. Well, for something like Vista 45, which is a large project, you know, I think it'd be good to have a traffic study for that. And then you can see the validity of the study. You know, not every traffic study is valid. Well, okay, then we can talk about that. But I would, my recommendation is that we at least get to the point where you have some data in front of you, because the data will relate to design, and stacking, I think, is an issue on Ferndale at the peak hours. And, you know, how is that going to impact with MDOT, switching green time? All that stuff really should be in play for a project of this magnitude, my opinion. So that we can discuss on December 7th, and we'll try and frame that up where the developer comes in with a good presentation. I think they're working on that right now. So staff will be more accessory, and it'll allow you folks to interact with the applicants, and they can say, okay, here's the improvements we've made to this plan since the work session. So that'll be the only item on the December 7th agenda. And for now, we don't know about 12/21 because we haven't run up against that deadline yet. It's in a few days. So we'll see if we have a second meeting in December. If not, I'll let you know right away, and open up that night. And finally, Paula Preby is your new planner, new planning director. She will start on December 5th. And we're more than pleased to have her come on board. We've been trying to get the office ready, and we've done some moving of files and a bunch of physical stuff to make things hopefully easier for her to transition in. She's going to have a lot to learn, you know, so we all need to be patient. She certainly has the qualifications. That's why we hired her. But she has a new master plan that we're going to be making some edits to, and that will all go through the public process. I'll certainly help with all of that. We have a new zoning ordinance that's being developed, you know, so that's going to be coming online. And then we just have a lot of activity. We also got a request from the, what is that? River Ridge condos, the development up in the first ward.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, they want to come back too. So, you know, the pace of development here is still pretty robust. So Paul is going to be coming into something with a lot of large, complicated projects. So I'll certainly be helping her out probably for the first year, just to get herself oriented to a pretty high volume of stuff that's coming through this department. So, but we're definitely looking forward to having her on board. And I am confident that she's gonna be a good fit for us.
When's Chick-fil-A tearing down that building?
I don't know. I know it's a big deal, but, those kind of private things.
Oh, I know, it's just curious.
We usually stay out of the way and let the private entities work that out, and we know when they pull a demolition permit. Now, speaking of demolition permits, I think you may have seen the apartment building that burned down in Standale is finally being taken down. The insurance companies finally worked something out, and because I think there was a little bit of this going on, so you'll see that building be rebuilt, and it's gonna be
The whole thing is being taken down?
yeah, that whole building that burned, yeah. And I think Rockford Construction is doing that, so we have a different group in there. Copper Rock built it, and I don't know how they bid that out. But remember that site was flipped too. The original developers sold that
Right.
to a private equity firm, so I don't know what they did with the bidding. But so it'd be good to get that building out of there and replaced, because that was quite an eyesore for a long time.
What about the development on Lake Michigan Drive and, Maynard there?
On the north or south side? Yeah.
On the south side.
On the south side, that gentleman named Joe Moderman from Allendale brought in a concept, and we vetted that out at Site Plan Review Committee. And I think there's some concern about the number of units. So I don't know how that's going to shake out. By zoning, even under the RPUD2 code that they're asking for, you're limited on total density to what's in your ARM district, which you guys probably have never even read through. I don't read through it very often, but it refers back to that ARM code, and there's a density calculation in there. And even in a PUD, you're not allowed to go over that base density. A lot of technical stuff. What it comes down to is the plan that they presented, I think, at Site Plan Review Committee, there was some concern about how many units are we talking about here? And we need some clarification on the definition of a unit, because otherwise, I don't know if they're in the density or if they're way over the density. So that being said, I think that one may take a while to work its way up to you folks.
Thank you.
Is there progress on Lincoln Lawns there? It looked like they had stalled out for a little bit, but are they moving again?
There's a progress meeting tomorrow with Travis Mabry. He set up just like every 2-week progress meetings will start up tomorrow. They've ran into a lot of complications with relocating the county drain that runs through there. So they're still trying to get that done. It's getting there. Their wetland permit just went to the public comment period last week, so it's a 30-day period. They applied for that back in March. So they're also kind of hitting up
A year ago
against.
running right now. They're awful.
Yeah, they're hitting up against the east side of that drain. They have to do some wetland fill too, so, and relocate some existing pipes that were in there. So they're also running up against that. So hopefully they'll be able to work over there soon. And I know they're really eager to get that permit issued so they can start placing fill. And the right turn lane on Lake Michigan Drive there too needs that wetland permit.
And probably the sidewalk too, wouldn't it?
Yep. So they're moving along. It's just, it's November now. So it'll be slow going, but they do plan to be putting utilities in all winter.
MDOT won't let them go into the road though for the winter, will they?
They seem to highly discourage that.
Yeah.
So they won't be going into the road, but to build that right turn lane, they said there's some pretty bad soils there. And they were kind of discouraging them from trying to get that right lane in there over the winter. So.
Make a motion to adjourn.
All right, done, thank you.